Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Modern Woodcarver Podcast. I'm your host, Michael. Today's guest is someone many of you probably already know, Jerry McNulty, also known as the Whistling Whittler. Jerry has built a name for himself through his unique blend of traditional whittling, personality, and storytelling, bringing a fresh energy to the craft that really resonates with both beginners and seasoned carvers. What makes Jerry stand out is not just his skill with a knife but the way he shares the process, making wood carving approachable, entertaining, and something people feel like they can jump into themselves. Whether it's his signature style, his content, or just the way he connects with the community, he's helping keep this craft alive and evolving. In this episode, we talk about Jerry's journey into wood carving, how he developed his voice as a creator, and what it takes to build something meaningful around this craft in today's world. Jerry, welcome to the show. I'm really glad to have you today.
Oh, I'm excited to be here. This is awesome.
Yeah, I've been a fan of your work for a number of years now. I've seen it on Instagram and quite a bit in Wood Carving Illustrated over the years. And yeah, I think your stuff's really, really cool and fun to look at. And there's a lot of detail involved in your work. And
Well,
it's
thank
just
you.
really fun to see.
Yeah, I'm so glad that I found wood and it's just given me a voice and expression. It's been an awesome journey that I've had and I love sharing it. I get passionate about it and it's fun to see people, grab a little bit of that passion and run with it. So it's been awesome.
Yeah. How did you first get into carving?
So, with me, it's I've kind of got a unique story here. Um, I started carving wood in 2019 and, right before COVID and, people are, 2019, that's not that long ago, but I mean, technically I started carving long before that. It's just,
Hmm.
I changed over to wood in about 2019. Before that, I used to carve architectural details in cement and plaster. And
Okay.
so would do really high end houses and things like that. And usually it was make it look like Europe, make it look like France, and can you match this color to my cockatoo's feathers, and a lot of crazy things like that. And um, I enjoyed it, and it was in my family. I was fourth generation. It was something passed down from father to son, and I still have family that's doing it. But as things got kind of tighter in the market back then. Um, I had houses that were working on that just didn't sell and sat, and the overhead and interest payments on the loans were just so big that I wasn't getting paid. And so
Mm.
I started traveling a lot and working out of state and being gone. And at that time, my kids were pretty young, and so it wasn't you know something that I wanted to continue. And I looked at my grandfather, and that was the example of where I'd be if I was kept going on the path. And he had to bust his butt. There's no retirement. It's hard. You squirrel money away, but in his day and age, it was you know a lot of good times and then minimal down times. In my day and age, it was more the other way around. A lot of negative things would happen to get a positive thing, and so business had kind of changed. So for me, it was lifestyle. It was time to look for something else, and so on a break from being out of town, I kind of put an application in well, I work for Caterpillar now, so I put an application in at Caterpillar. Didn't really think much of it, and I'm like thinking, it's a brand new plant here in my area, and maybe I can go to work there. And they called me up and put me to work, and I've been there now for about 15 years. Um, but I kind of lost that artistic expression because now I sit at a computer. It was kind of
Yeah.
cool because I didn't even know how to spell 401k, but now I have one. So that was kind of cool. But um, you know, I uh, I work at a desk job there. I didn't touch a computer, and that's my most of my job now. But that artistic expression was gone. That the outlet of my creativity and being able to do these things, and I didn't really realize how bad I needed it. Um, one year, and this was probably about 2017, I had taken my son to Boy Scout camp. And, I came up through scouts. Well, I am an Eagle Scout. Um, and I really enjoyed my time there. So when my son came to that age, I was thinking, yeah, this is something that's going to be fun. And so I took him to camp, and there was an older guy there that was carving, and he was carving neckerchiefs and bolo ties. And this is a camp out in West Texas. Nothing out in West Texas but cactus, which I like, and rocks and things like that. But this guy was out there and he'd carve these bolo ties, and then he'd auction them off to the scoutmasters to help raise money for the kids at camp. And these bolo ties were going for $300-400. They were awesome. I mean,
Wow.
bears and Indians and some really cool things. And I thought, hey, that's kind of cool. So didn't think much of it, beyond that. Went home, um, and then went back to that same camp 2 years later. 2 years later, the same guy is doing the same thing.
Hmm.
And so then it really caught my attention. Hey, what's this about? Um, I soon realized that the name of the handicraft building was named after him. He'd been going to that camp since he was, 12 years old, and now he's in his late 80s. And
Wow.
he shows up every week at camp and does this. And he's carved hundreds and hundreds of things to raise money. And the numbers are just flying in my head. How much money has this guy made for these kids to go to camp? It's just outrageous. So at that point, I was like, I got to talk to this guy a little bit. That's so awesome. I'd like to kind of learn how to carve. That's cool. And so I went and kind of picked his brain a little bit, and he was more than willing to talk. He's like, well, you need to buy this knife, and you need to do this, and you need to do that. And so I went into the trading post there at the summer camp and bought little, you know, bandsaw blanks and neckerchief slides. And I think I carved every single one of them that they had that week when they were at camp. And by Wednesday, every boy in our group was carving too. So it was like a bigger thing. Um, when came home, I joined found a club online, and our club is the Alamo Area Woodcarvers, which ended up being an awesome group. Um, right away you had somebody come and sit next to you and say, "Hey, let me help you with that. What are you working on?" And you get this mentorship right away with the club, and I was off to the races. I came home, I installed a shop light over my bed. Um, if they can eat chips in bed, I can make chips in bed. So we did that, and I just have been a sponge, absorbing every single thing I could. Competing, and going to the bigger shows. My first big show was the Texas Woodcarver Guild show, and that was 2019. And it was kind of funny because I was excited to go to it, and I was at another scouting event, and there was a gentleman in front of me in line at the chow line, and he had a carving up on his hat, and I said, "Hey, did you carve that?" And he says, "Yeah." I said, "Well, hey, I'm going to the Texas Woodcarvers Guild show coming up." He's like, "Cool, me too. I'm the president." So it was awesome because I met the president there, Michael Griffin. He was in line, and he was just as excited about carving as I was. And that was kind of my introduction to the community, is carving, and then joining the Facebook groups and things like that. And after a little bit of time, just seeing some people's work that inspired you, and trying to do eyes like this guy or a nose like this guy, and then finding, then COVID hit us, and COVID changed a lot of things, because then you had people that were part of that community that you see, that may not get to a show in Texas. Now you have them available online, and so I can sign up for Dwayne Gosnell's class, and I can sign up for Ryan Olson's class, and I can learn all these, awesome things without even being there, and so I just turned into a sponge from that point. Dave Stetson's classes and learning, his anatomy and stuff like that. It's just been awesome. But and it's kind of funny though when we talk about anatomy. And I actually went to school to be a mortician. And you're
Oh,
like, well,
cool.
how does that relate to carving? Well, my best class in mortuary school was restorative art, where you have to recreate the facial features if somebody gets something messed up. And that was my favorite part. And I didn't end up going into that field because, because I went to one of the highest rated schools in the country, and you have to do a 2 years internship, and I couldn't get nobody to hire me for free, and
Hmm.
construction paid a lot better. So, that wasn't the avenue that I took. But, um, so that's where I started carving. And it's awesome because I found that then that I had some natural skills already because I was doing stop cuts and relieving stuff out of material. I mean, with plaster, you're adding a lot of material to the wall to create shapes, and then taking away. So it has some different applications, but it was that artistic outlet. And to me, what I find inspiring the most about where I'm at now is you've practiced skills so much. I mean, you practice stop cut, you practice removing this material, you practice those basics that it just becomes ingrained in who you are. And after a while, it's not about, am I going to do this eye right? It's about expression, about, same thing with music. I mean, you play scales so many times that the melody in your head just works because your fingers already know where to go, and that's kind of where I'm reaching now. Even as I try to push where I'm going all the time, um, pushing the face and pushing, getting really into character. I love character. I love the exaggerations of facial shapes and changing, jaw lines and just messing with every single little feature to pop it out and um, being able to start doing some of the stuff that's in my head because my skills have caught up with that. So to me, that's just a wonderful place to be at. Drawing is something that, I don't know if you've seen some of my drawings lately, but
Yeah, I was going to
considering
ask you
I
about that.
couldn't, so I could not draw when I started carving. Zero.
Interesting, because you're an incredible artist.
Which is crazy for everybody. I mean, when you think about it, along this journey, I decided I wanted to carve a face in a block of wood. It seems to me a little bit easier would have been to carve that or to draw that face on a piece of paper, yet we chose the hard route. And your first carving probably wasn't that great, but you put that time into it, and all of a sudden now you've got it. Well, what would have happened if you would have done the same thing with paper? You know, um, that probably would have developed just as well as where you go for carving. But you develop those two together, then all of a sudden, and a lot of that is I didn't realize that I was getting better drawing until, I sat down and started practicing a little bit. And I'm like, hey, I couldn't do that before because now I've learned how to, different tricks of lining out lines on wood and stuff like that. And you know where different features are supposed to go. And all of a sudden it translates, and so that's been incredible for me. And then knowing now that learning standard proportions and taking that and then manipulating the shapes out, it helps your wood carving in return. So it feeds off each other. So it's just, every day at work now, I at least try to draw a couple faces and stuff. And even that just puts ideas in my mind. I come home at lunch and I usually draw something and draw out a pattern or something like that, try to cut it out on the bandsaw. And then after work, I'll come and carve it, or do something. Right now I'm working on this little trinket board. So I'm trying to do a small carving every day. I mean, usually I'll
Hmm.
do something larger every day, but today's card was this little guy right here. So I don't know if you can see
Oh,
this
really
one, but
cool.
he's
Yeah.
yeah, he's so I measured the space, and the space was like 2 inches by an inch thick. And so every day I'm trying to fill one of those little spaces. But so that took me about 10 minutes to draw and about 30 minutes to carve. But just fun stuff, and it's
Oh,
hard
very
to do all
cool.
these things I want to do when I'm trying to get ready for classes too. So I
Yeah.
mean, I've got a couple classes that I've got coming up, and you know, in April, third week of April, I'll be at the Texas Woodcarvers Guild, which is cool because that's where I started out, and it's kind of funny where I have all those mentors that I learned from that are now sitting in some of my classes, so that's kind of a circle thing, and um, and that's a lot of fun. But I've got a class that we're taking facial shapes and we're transferring it from paper to wood. So we're going to draw and create some characters, and then figure out how to get them carved. And so that sounds like a fun thing for me. And I'm glad I have a few students that thought that was exciting too. And we're going to get there and carve some fun things.
Oh, really cool. Yeah, that's an incredible story, journey. I have a very similar um, background as well. I used to work in a wood shop for
Uh-huh.
many years, like 10 years or so, 12 years. Um, and then now I work at a desk. And to
Yeah.
me, I'm don't get me wrong, after working in a wood shop for a lot of years, getting hurt and injured and working through headaches and back pains and shoulder pains, sitting at a desk is nice. And
Yeah.
but but there's a part of me, a very strong part of me, that really misses working with my hands and
Outside.
being
Yeah.
creative and having that outlet. And I do the same thing. I draw at work, and when I can, I'll think of new ideas and stuff. So I can definitely relate to that very well.
Yeah.
And
Well, COVID was awesome because I was working from home for 3 years. So I
yeah,
replaced three keyboards in that time because they were filled with wood chips. So right now, as you take conference calls, you look around the room and people are, playing on their phone. And that for me, that was carving while I was, doing that. Now it's drawn, drawn
yeah,
some faces while I'm on a call. But I have to fight to stand up and move. My body will, and this is the same thing with carving. Really, my as a youth I didn't realize it, but my wife says I'm ADD. And I have to multitask. My brain goes in 50 different directions all the time. I'm thinking of 20 things. Um, it's hard to concentrate on some things
hmm
until I'm carving wood, and to me that's kind of my zen, my relaxing space, and I don't even realize that I'm sitting here carving as long as I am. I do. And
yeah,
some days I'll walk out of here, out of my space here, and I can't move my hands because I'm carving so long, but I don't want to finish. I don't want to stop. I got to finish what I'm doing. Um,
yeah,
and my mind focuses so well on what I'm doing when I'm carving. So, um, there's a lot of benefits to it. And being a veteran and being involved with some of the veteran community, that's something as well that I'm trying to go over there and like, do we need these people with PTSD with knives? I'm like, well, this is an awesome thing, and it
yeah,
really just for me, it calms nerves and just lets me focus where I normally couldn't, so it's been fun.
yeah. I think for a lot of us too, that escape from the real world, quiets the noise and allows us to just kind of separate the monotony of day-to-day life at times, or the craziness
Yeah,
that's going on in your life. It gives us a
yeah,
nice outlet to put that on the back burner and just zen out and focus.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it also
And
it also gives you perspective even when you're out in the community as well, because I see life in a different view set now. You're looking for the enjoyment and pleasure of things because they're carving. Carving is enjoyable. So when I go at it, that's my attitude. That's thinking positive, looking at people for their interesting, um, just differences and things that are inspire me now were never things that I even paid attention to or were on the radar before.
mhm,
Just life. You know, being and even teaching and stuff. Um, all the interesting people you meet when you're out, traveling and in these places and listening to their life stories and I mean everybody's talking about the medical issues, which I have quite a few. Um, that's part of carving conversations, but just listening to the life experience and the things that have happened for all these people that you meet along the way. And I think that's probably what you're getting a little bit at, doing the podcast here is being able to share and not just the carving aspect of it, but the community aspect of it, and just it's been
absolutely.
incredible, just being
Yeah.
part of people's lives and caring about people more now than I ever have in my whole life, you know?
Yeah. And that's what I'm really trying to do with this whole podcast is there's so much more to all of us than just our carvings, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of us do some really cool things and have different skill sets, but there's more to us, like we have different lives outside of the carving world. Um, like you
Yeah.
mentioned yourself, you're a musician. I also grew up playing music. And there's some people that are into other hobbies and other crafts and artistries and different things. So I'm just really interested in kind of, yeah, one, getting to know the carver based on his work, but it's kind of opening the door into the other
Yeah.
realms of these
Yeah. Who is
people's
this guy?
lives.
Like,
Yeah, what
who
makes
are
them
they?
tick? Why do they think the way they do? How does carving help them in their day-to-day lives as well? Because like you said,
Yeah.
many people are suffering from illnesses or mental health issues, and carving really is
Grounding.
their only yeah, their grounding or their only escape or only hope, and same could be said for a lot of other hobbies and crafts. But whatever it
Yeah.
is that people are attracted to, I'm glad they found that, and I'm
Yeah.
in the carving world. I'm glad all of us have found what really makes us happy and what we enjoy doing. And
Yeah. Absolutely.
you know, tying it back to something you said earlier about the drawing aspect of it. Um,
Hmm.
it's funny you mentioned that because a lot of people say you don't need to know how to draw to carve, and that's absolutely true. You don't. Um, I do think if you do know how to draw, it does help your carving. Um,
It does.
it
Absolutely.
does. They definitely go hand in hand. It's not
Yeah.
necessary, but I think
But
you
but yeah, that is, it's a skill that can be developed. I mean, it's
yes,
hard
yeah,
for me to
absolutely,
understand the mindset of I just can't do it, because to me you can. It's just,
yeah,
and my kids are the same way. Dad, I'm not talented. I can't do anything. I'm not
mm,
talented at anything. I'm like, how do you know you haven't applied yourself to it? And
yeah,
and
just
that's what it
try.
is. I mean, how many free throws do you got to shoot to be a professional basketball player? It's the same thing with carving. If you want to be good, there's only one way to do that. You got to put the knife time in it. You gotta
Yeah,
spend that time carving. And you want to get good real fast, carve all the time. When I see people
yeah,
coming to the club meeting and they're still working on the same project that they had last time I saw them, which was 2 weeks, a month, and they're not much further, that's somebody that's doing it for enjoyment. They're not trying to get better, because they're not doing the things that it takes, and that's carving.
yeah,
But that's it. I mean, so with my kids, they might not have had that passion yet, or found that passion in something where they're willing to apply themselves and put the time in to develop those skills. I mean, everything,
yeah,
from the way I look at teaching, um, developmental on the next skill. So, I mean, you're learning, stop, cut. What side do I take the material from? Well, I could take it on one side and that makes this popped out. I can take it on the other side and it makes that popped out. Training yourself to think three-dimensionally isn't a natural thing for some people. That's something you have
yeah.
to
It's
develop.
difficult.
Yet everybody kind of gets there the longer you carve, and that's what it is. So learning those fundamentals, and then as you look and evaluate other people's carvings, you're thinking about what did they do to get there? What tool did they use? What cut did they use? What position? Looking at grain direction, looking at things like that, and um, becoming a master of just observation just propels you to that next level. I mean, but it's all the basic skills and putting the time in, just cutting, just learning how the grain works, learning what, like when I turn this around, I'm going to carve an arm on this side, but I got to carve it in the opposite direction because I got to feel and breathe the grain.
Yeah,
To me, it's like being a surfer and riding the waves. It's understanding the flow of the grain. And even when you start thinking about changing where your head goes and the directions of the head and the elements of the head, then it puts it in a direction where the grain just isn't natural and that you've worked before. And now you're putting a face on the cross grain, and just understanding all that, and then making sure your tools are sharp enough to cut it. That's the other equation in there. But
yeah.
it's just,
And the type of
there's a
wood,
lot, but
there's a
and the
lot to
type of wood
factor
you're
in.
using.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. But, and a lot of my tool selection, a lot of time comes around to, um, I know what it takes to go across the grain, and I know it's going to be sharper, at the
yeah,
moment. Uh, so that's what I'm going to use to cut that with.
yeah. I think for most people, you need to have that spark and that drive to want to improve. I mean, there's a lot of people that want to be good at something right away, but they don't really have
Yeah.
that internal driving force that wants them to really pursue it and get good at it. And I used to come across this all the time working in, the artistic world, in a wood
Mhm.
shop. And um, there was so many people that came in that they were interested and they wanted to learn, but they just wanted to go from beginner to master. which is not a thing, unfortunately. They
Yeah.
like to
Yeah.
think that they knew everything, and th- more often than not, they got humbled real fast because you're new. You know,
Yeah.
you don't know what you're doing. Even if you somewhat know how it goes, you don't have the hands-on experience. And they would all get really frustrated and they would all get really upset. Um, and what I noticed a lot of people were doing was they ended up speeding through the process, because they would compare themselves to other people, and they would see how fast that person's doing it, not realizing that person's been doing it for 20 years.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they just naturally know what to do. Like you mentioned, it's instinctive at that point.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
would always tell them, when I would show them what to do, I would always say, look, just take your time. Like, the speed will come later. Just get it down right. Focus on what you're doing, how it's moving, how it's working, how the tool works. Is it sharp enough? Is it dull? Pay attention to everything as a whole. Learn those fundamentals and then work your way up. But you need to have that passion to want to know how to sharpen, want to know how the machines work, how the wood
Yeah.
moves, how the grain direction reads. All these things have to come into play, and you really need to have that internal spark for it. Um, and then if you don't, there's no way they're going to get good, and they'll get frustrated and they'll put down the hobby or the knife or whatever it is that they're doing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. There's got
yeah,
to be a roadmap to get there.
yeah, and it needs to start within yourself. There's a
Yeah.
certain mentality I
Yeah.
think it
Yeah. And
takes.
I'm pretty competitive to start with, but, um, as I get going, it's, some of the best advice I've gotten from different carvers is don't try to be everybody else. Try to be you.
No, just be
You
yourself.
go to a show and you see what won, and you're not going to try to duplicate or emulate that. Look at what you do, and then try to figure out a way to elevate your own stuff. And part of it is finding good mentors that will be honest with you. Besides, and that's one of the things about being with this community is it's so pat on the back, good job, that sometimes you don't get the positive or the constructive criticism with, you should have
Yeah.
tried this. This had elevated a little bit. And I know, right away there was a certain CCA member years ago that called me or actually he texted me about a carving I posted and said, "Hey, are you open to feedback on this?" Which was awesome.
Oh,
Just
that's
having
great.
that come out of, not I hadn't talked to him for a while, and he said, "Hey, you need to carve the base." Just little things. Just you need to do
Little
this,
subtle
and
things.
it'll
Yeah.
elevate that carving immensely. And I see that all the time now. I see things online, and I'm like, this one little thing will just drive that carving crazy. And it's hard sometimes because I don't want to push my personal style onto people, but um, having those honest a mentor that can give you that honest feedback and say, "Hey, you need to come in a little bit more on the temples here. You need to, learn how to sharpen your tools." Just some of that
Yeah.
stuff um, goes a long way. Just mentorship, and you
Yeah.
know, clubs are probably, it's hard because not everybody lives where a club is. Um, but
Yeah.
there's enough
Same
stuff
for me.
online and
That's the
groups and
case.
stuff that, yeah. Um, and then going to shows and seeing the big picture helps people, I think, connect more with the audience and the community. Um, and that's so important to go and meet these people who are willing to help you out. And you don't have
Yeah.
to, carving shows are different. I mean, can get kind of expensive, but watch for the ones in your area, and there's ways to make them a little bit cheaper. And
Yeah.
we've got an Airbnb for this next show, and we've invited three other carvers in there at our cost, just because I know they were struggling getting there, and I want to make sure that
Oh,
they
that's
can
really
have that
awesome.
that that awesome experience. So just
Yeah.
it's a great thing. But
Yeah, that's really cool.
now,
And I mean, with the internet and everything, with Instagram and Facebook, there's for the people that can't afford or don't have the means to get to these events, the internet's a great resource for all that. And
yeah,
everyone in the wood carving community is so generous and gracious with their knowledge and their feedback and everything. But I think what ends up happening with a lot of beginners, um, and I'm guilty of this as well, is
Mhm.
um, when you're starting out, or if you don't have that creative streak, I like coming up with new ideas, you'll see
Mhm.
things online that you like that look cool.
Yeah.
So, and you'll follow a tutorial that you find, and you'll carve a bear or a moose or a gnome or whatever the case is, and because just because you liked it, and you end up copying that artist's creation, which is fine. There's a reason they put these videos out. You do that as well. You make tutorial videos. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I think what ends up happening is the beginners will end up defaulting to just carving that same image.
Yeah.
And I think it takes a while for people to finally adapt and realize, hey, I can change this feature and that feature and create it to make it their own. And eventually it does
Yeah.
follow suit that way. But yeah, that's why a lot of times you'll end up seeing these cookie cutter type carvings from everyone. And I'm
Yeah. Well,
totally guilty of that myself. I've seen
yeah. Well,
tons of
I mean,
linker videos and I copy
yeah.
them, and you know,
Well, that's fun going around to shows too, and looking at people's tables, and you know exactly where their inspiration's coming from. Um,
yeah.
you know,
And
or
I've
rough outs or things like that. But,
yeah, the rough outs especially. I've now started to where I'll take inspiration from other carvings, but it's mainly now because I know I have the confidence to alter it and change it to my own little
yeah.
styles or techniques, that I'll now see these other artists' work, and I'll want to emulate it because again, I like what it looks like, I like
Yeah.
how it is, but I'll add my own flair or my own hand to it to not exactly copy it.
Yeah.
Um, one of the most recent ones I did was, well, not that recent, but I'm blanking on the artist's name who did it, but he carved that Sleepy Time bear. It was on the cover of Woodcarving Illustrated.
Oh, Weatherby, Rich
Uh,
Weatherby.
Rich Weatherby. Yes, thank you. So he had the Sleepy Time bear, and I just love that, and I copied it, but I made my own take on it. I didn't
So
copy it.
yeah, I don't know if you caught mine. I have it on Instagram. Rich came and stayed here with me and um carved at my house a couple days, and then we went down to a show in the valley. But I called it the Sleepy Time Bear. But
Mhm.
it's on my Instagram. I carved it into a mafia guy with a
Oh, that's
machine
I
gun,
did see that one. Yes.
and it's got a mug that says, yeah, "Snitches get stitches."
Ah, that's cool.
So yeah, I
No, that's
carved
really cool.
three of his I actually got one right here. Three of his rough outs, but every day I tried to change it into something else. This was his sheriff with a star on it. He had a
Mhm.
star on it, and he's like, "Look at my." So I made him a mariachi guy.
No, that's cool.
So
Yeah, and
yeah,
it's just those little subtle details, changes that make it your
yeah,
own.
yeah, yeah. So that's
Yeah.
always fun to me. So I mean, one thing that you can do that I like to do is I'll take one of my carvings, even before I paint it, or even one that I have painted. I'll take a picture of it, run it through Chat GPT or another AI, and then say, "Hey, show me this carving as if it's a fireman, show me this carving as a plumber." And it'll
Oh,
take
cool.
the
Yeah,
same
that's
exact carving and change it. I'll also use it before I even paint it, where I'll be like, "Show me this carving with red and white striped shirt." And I can
mhm.
visualize the idea in my head before I before I paint it, or show
Yeah,
me
that's
this
really
in a
cool.
70s style. So it helps with like rough outs where I can take a shape and say, make it this. AI's the a great tool if you can use it to help visualize creativity and, you know, help formalize some of those ideas. If you use it to replace creativity, then that's a whole different thing. Although, if you try to get your creativity from AI, what it's doing is pulling images or other things that are already on the internet. And so you actually are copying it from somewhere.
Copying.
So
Yeah.
you have to start with some form of creativity, like I'll draw something, I'll carve something, and then put that in AI. I see a lot of people online with they'll like, I'm working on one right now, just a little bust. Um, I've got this blocked in, and they get that block in, and then they're like, well, where do I go? Where do I go from here? Um,
Yeah.
you can take your image now, put it in AI, and say, show me this as a hillbilly, show me this as, whatever. And you can start seeing your shape that you already created, and then getting a few ideas from that. So it's kind of
Yeah,
fun for me. I
that's a
like to
great
do a lot
idea.
with I like to do a lot with cutouts, and so like I'll take a cutout of well, this guy I've done probably 4 or 5 times, and each one's different. And it started out as a flat plane pattern, um, and then I actually packed coffee. I gave one to Pat Coffee in Pennsylvania, but so this one I carved when I got home because I had to replace the one that I gave. But this, I took that pattern and I ran it through AI, and I 10 different ideas for that same one. So I've got a pile of images that I created. So if I go teach a class and somebody wants something different, I mean, I can carve a bunch of go-bys with all those ideas that I planned out, through AI. So just using that to visualize my thought process, and my inspiration has been really kind of fun. So, and I was
Oh,
showing a lot of
that's
people
a
like last
really
time I was on the road, but yeah.
that's a really great way to
And
utilize
even that, I
AI.
mean,
I mean,
so even when you're drawing, I can draw face, um, or even take a carving or draw a whole profile, and then tell it, let me see a side profile of this. And it'll give you a
mm,
side profile of that. So if you try to use that as your pattern, it doesn't always work because the proportions don't drag out. But if you took that as just showing you the lines and then draw it separately, on your 2-inch block or 2-inch piece of paper to get the proportions right, it works pretty well. So
oh, really cool. I'm gonna have to try that out. And
yeah, I mean,
yeah,
there's a lot of opportunity there to use it as a tool. Everybody just, kind of gets worked up because they've seen so many things being, online. You don't even know what's real and what's not real, but
yeah,
there's so many applications out there. Probably most of the apps that you've used in the past have some kind of AI feature to them.
of
Um,
course.
you know, so just looking at some of that, and I don't get along with all of them all the time, and I have to swap back and forth because
Yeah,
they don't understand my language, or they're just being
yeah.
funny.
Things get a little lost in the system.
Yeah. Sometimes it's funny what they come up with that's just not even close to what you told it, um, but it's been a fun little tool there.
Yeah,
And it's something that I use daily now, besides putting
oh,
Sam
really
Elliott in
cool.
all the family portraits.
Yeah, I saw that too. I saw like on your Instagram, there's a couple like AI
Yeah.
images,
Well,
Willie Nelson
yeah.
and
So,
um
well, what happened was I was with Roger Stegall down in Florida, so I posted just a picture of myself and Roger, and then I added Merle Haggard, and I said something like, "All the best of the best are down here in Florida," and somebody on my feed responded and added Willie Nelson and Chris Christopherson and Johnny
that's
Cash,
cool.
and so that was kind of fun. Well,
No, go
I
ahead.
said I've even taken people, I'll do a lot of carvings for people that want me to do characters of people they know. And so that's been kind of fun where I'll take um, take that image and put that in AI, make it a character, and then you see an animated version, or even making a line drawing of an actual person, and then telling AI, make the chin a little bigger, make the temple a little bigger, and exaggerating their image of an actual person, and then being able to put that on wood is really kind of cool.
Interesting. Yeah, because you do a lot of the exaggerated features. You do the very like swooped in temples and the big jaw lines and
Yeah,
the quirky
yeah.
faces. But one thing I have to say that I really admire about your work is I'm a big fan of the small details of things. So what really impresses me is the details of the clothing that you get down. Because all your characters, they're either they're kind of like farmers or hobos. They have that kind
Yeah,
of look
yeah,
to them, and
yeah,
I like carving those types of baggy clothes and stuff. But what I really
yeah,
like is how you're able to get the collar flaps, and you'll get the suspenders popped out, and you'll get the little buttons, and the
yeah.
like
Well,
everything just
some of it too.
goes really well together.
One of the things that I do consciously is the setup work before I put the shape in. So if I'm going to do a collar here, I'm going to take a knife and I'm going to swoop up on the surface and prepare the surface in the shape that I want it before I put the lines in there to make the collar. Like I'm not doing the collar and then trying to swoop it up. I'm designing that, with my knife before I even put that in there, to give it some movement in there, but before I even start. And I mean, I do that on the face. The before I do this eye bag, I don't just grab a gouge and run it on the eye bag. I'm going to take my knife and make that shape and make that flat area perfect for the eye bag, and then I'm going to put it in there because that gives me a lot of more options too of where I can go.
Yeah,
Because not everybody has heavy eye bags, and either I want it to be a younger person and softer, but it just giving you that form or the shape before you even think about putting the detail on there really helps quite a bit.
yeah, interesting. Yeah, I'm starting because I've been talking to a lot of character style carvers. I've been getting inspired to want to do some caricature styles. So it hasn't really been something that I've been too interested in the past for whatever reason. I always admired them and I like them, but I guess just seeing everyone's work and talking to them, it's really giving me that spark to try it
Yeah,
myself because I do
it's
really enjoy
it's
the
kind of
animated poses.
yeah,
The
yeah,
walkings and the limbs and the legs up um and I like the scenery of it that
yeah,
some of these carvers are
yeah.
creating because they're
It
creating like a whole background scene with it as well.
it is kind of funny to me where how things evolve from when you start. Like everybody kind of has that vision of what they want to do when they start carving. And after having carved now for several years, I don't do anything near what I thought I was going to do. I thought I was going to do tropical fish and airbrush them.
Hmm.
Um, and when I started carving, I mean, the first show I went to, I think I entered every single category. Um, character and flowers and fish and relief and everything because I
Yeah.
didn't know what I really wanted to do, and it took me a while before uh, this just gravitated to me more than anything else. And it's
Hmm.
the anime. And I studied regular bases, and correct anatomy and things like that. And that doesn't, I don't care about that stuff whatsoever now. It's the
Interesting.
exaggeration and the expressions and the not realism. I don't want normal proportions. I want to
Yeah.
break the rules, but understanding them is an important part of it, knowing where things should go, because there's only so much exaggeration you can do, and then it's not realistic at all.
Yeah.
It just,
Yeah, there's a
it's like
fine line to
you didn't
walk,
even
like
try that.
how far you can
Yeah.
bend something and how you can
But if
tweak
I
it.
want to have a big mustache on something, maybe I'm pulling the nose up higher on the eye line, so I'm not doing it at 2/3. I'm going to push the nose up here and make the eyes smaller to still make this almost proportionate. But then
Mhm.
I've got all this room for this big monster mustache. Just
Yeah.
and then I'm adjusting the ears on the face, or just understanding the rules enough to break them. Because you're still, I mean, you're going to change the proportions, but you're still going to use the same criteria for putting the eye line and the nose line. I mean, it's the same 2/3. You're just moving the 2/3 up here,
Yeah,
so
because
that they don't look too.
you still have to make it look like a human, I whether
Yeah,
it's exaggerated or not. It still needs to resemble something specific. Uh, yeah,
yeah,
interesting. When I first started,
but
my thing was wood spirits. I really liked the wood spirit, so that
yeah,
was my very first carving. Um, and that still sticks with me. I still like doing them. I think it's something I just will always kind of gravitate to at some point. I'll put it down for a while, and I like to do other things, but I really do want to try it all. I want to get into the
Yeah.
caricature style stuff. I like the whimsical aspect. And actually today I was working on I was lucky enough for that Dan Gallagher from Goofballs by Dan. He sent me my
Yep.
very
Yep.
first
Met him and
yeah, he sent me my very first chunk of cottonwood bark, right? Nice piece.
oh,
And
cool. Yeah.
I I carved this wood spirit
Awesome.
in it. So it is something I kind of gravitate towards. And yeah, I
Yeah.
just
I can't I
you know,
can't handle the
I
grittiness of the on my tools.
I gotta say I really enjoyed carving it. It was very brittle. It's very
Yeah.
it's different. It's different. It's kind of like dusty almost.
Yep. Yep.
You look
I'll
at it
do that.
and it crumbles away. But I'm a fan. I want to pick up a few more pieces of cottonwood bark and give it a shot. But I'm also trying to get more into the realism stuff. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
I was using Alec's book to
That's an
check out
awesome
the
book.
faces
That's an
and the
awesome book.
proportions. Yeah.
And looking at the difference between the female head and the male head, he does a real good job of
Yeah, my
showing that in there.
the I really want to attempt a full figured female carving
Yeah.
at some point. Just because I've mainly carved rustic, gritty looking mountain guys. Um,
Yeah.
I feel like the female form it's delicate and it's smoother. You have to try really hard to make it look beautiful.
Yeah.
And you can't hide behind a mustache or a scar or something. Well, big beard. You got to get all the proportions
Yeah.
right. So it is something I'm aiming to do at some point.
Yeah. That's a hard thing. And there's only a handful of people that I know that do that well, you know.
Yeah, there's not a lot
But
out there.
no, but I mean, it's something I think that we all aspire to, and I try it every now and then I do something that people like and then I hate it and won't show anybody. So,
Yeah.
um, you know, I find that a lot with my work, where somebody likes it, but I hate it and I won't, won't put it
Yeah.
out or show it, or I don't like to sell stuff if I don't totally like it myself, you know,
I could see that.
and
Same here.
it's, it's hard. It's hard because I mean, we look at things for what they're not, where everybody else is seeing it for what it is.
Yeah. Well,
I
we're
see I should have done this. And, I do get the chance to go back and recarve a lot of stuff and change the proportions or move these arms, different spots. And I like some of those things, but it's hard for me. I got boxes and boxes of carvings because, um, to me, it's not a reflection of where I think I should be.
yeah. And that's part of the personal growth and the respect for the craftsmanship of yourself. You want to
Yeah.
always produce the best of your ability. And you're only as good as your last carving. You always want to improve on
Yeah.
your last carving and get better and better and better. So yeah, I can definitely relate and respect that. Because like I said, I
But,
came
but
from a
that was
wood shop background, so you needed
yeah.
to be on top of your A game all the time. Um, so
Yeah.
you're always
So
chasing
that
that,
was
and
a fun thing. Yeah. That was a fun thing when I started though. I mean, where you carve something and it was like, this is awesome. Look what I did. This is awesome. And then next week you carve something else and it's like, oh, look at that trash. you know,
yeah,
like I don't even want to see that again. When you did it, it was like, oh, that's incredible. I've never done something that cool.
yeah.
Now
I
it's
mean,
kind of funny because I've, given some ornaments to people over the years and last year I went to somebody's house and they've got an ornament that I carved, in my first, couple months. And I totally forgot about it, but I went there and I'm like, I carved that. Like,
yeah,
it's light years from where I'm at now, but it
yeah,
still looks kind of cool and just in a rustic way. But
yeah,
it's it's awesome just to see your own growth, in some of this
yeah,
and even now it surprises me or I think, oh, there's not much to go. And then next year I'm carving something completely different and the process has changed and I'm in a different spot, and I think that's hard area for growth is knowing where you want to go and knowing how to get there. I mean, those are the two things that I think people struggle with. Um, I've been fortunate enough that, I can look at my carvings and pretty hardly critique what I'm doing wrong. And, meeting people, seeing people looking at, and it's not trying to be like somebody else, but seeing ways and techniques that they did that made something that elevated where I struggle and knowing where I struggle and not letting that be something that I put to, like, oh, I can't carve eyes. I'm not going to do eyes. I want to do these figures that have the face, the hat pull over the eyes. No, if that's something you struggle with, attack it. And so that's what I try to do is attack things. For me, carving hands was a lot of it. And even moving from faces to full figures. I always thought if I got a face that was really cool, the second I put it on a full figure and figured out how to do the full figure, then I was going to have something because I already got the face down, and that's the hard part, right?
Hmm.
So just knowing and evaluating your stuff enough that you can know where to improve and don't hide behind it or as a weakness or a handicap, just attacking that, and putting the time into developing those things so that you become better. So I mean that's practicing doing the same thing over and over makes you good at it. It doesn't have to be the same face over and over again, but a lot of this is muscle memory. Some of it is
Yeah.
building things in order so that this stroke sets up the next one. That's a lot of it is just,
Yeah.
and that only comes from repetition. If you have to write out the steps on what it took to get there, it would drive you crazy because there's so many of them. When you do it enough, it just becomes part of who you are.
Yeah, and I think some people just get complacent in their skill level. They kind of plateau for a while. They get comfortable doing the same thing over and over again, and they don't want to venture out and try new things because it took them
Yeah,
so long to get where they are. So they'll
yeah,
stick to what they know,
yeah,
because they're so afraid to kind of mess up. Um, but yeah, I
yeah.
agree with you. I think people should just, you're afraid to mess up the eyes, start carving a bunch of eyes and just work at it, improve, and get better. I mean, I'm looking
Yeah,
at
I
this
still
carving
carve
I just
eyes.
did
Yeah,
today, and I'm already looking at things that I can improve on. I see things that look weird or unproportioned. It was also like for me a first time carving something that wasn't blocked out, like out of
yeah,
a square. It was like weird crevices and like you said, things broke off and I had to adapt to it and change. So
yeah. So I mean, I'm still every day carving eyes. I've got sticks all over the place that these are like little study sticks that
study
have,
sticks.
yeah, that'll have, I'll carve three different eyes because I want to see if I can get expression in just an eye. You know, what can I do to this eye to tell a story just with an eye? And so I'll do sticks around the house and leave them everywhere. um, but it's fine. Same thing with the nose. Just do a bunch of noses and tweak them. What can I do to this nose that the nose tells a story on its own? And then you put all that stuff together, and then you get something crazy.
Yeah, really cool. Yeah. No, I like all you do, and I always look forward to seeing what you put out next. And your videos have been great. How did you kind of get into the whole YouTube scene?
I don't know. It's after so long, people like, are you going to do a video on it? Are you going to do a video on it? Do you do Zoom
Yeah,
lessons? Do you do this? Do you do that?
kind of forced into it.
And yeah, and YouTube isn't natural for me. I mean, that's a forced, skill. I mean, like anything, I'm hoping eventually I'll get good at it when I've done it enough, but I don't. It's hard for me to be as consistent. I'll get blocks of time, but I have so much going on, and my schedule is ridiculous. And so right now, am I going to film a video or am I going to get ready for the class I got coming up? And I'm
Yeah.
trying to do both, but it's just so I've done a few shorts lately just because it's been quick, and I can knock them out at lunch or whatever. But I like YouTube. I like the amount of people I can reach. The feedback has been pretty good. I like instructing in that method and, um, getting patterns up. And, I'll sell patterns for $2 on a digital download, but if they can screenshot it or whatever, I don't care. For me, it's about sharing. And, you're never going to make that much money as a woodcarver on YouTube. It's just not
Yeah,
the
no.
the demographics aren't there unless you're Doug Linkler, a linker. But just it's not going to happen. Um, so it's just a love for doing it and a love for teaching and a love for, I like when somebody sees something or tries something and seeing their interpretation or their version of it. I love it, seeing a pattern that I drew or something and seeing how somebody's carved it or used it or, changed it. There's a guy down in Florida. And it's on the I entered it in the CCA show last year. There's a priest, and it's got a real distorted face on him. And there's a guy in Florida that carved that, and he
Hmm.
exaggerated the cheeks a little heavier, and then he put praying hands in front of it. And I think he's making it a beer tap. Um,
Oh, that's
just
cool.
awesome. It's so awesome, and
Really
I
cool.
love the comments. I love reading and hearing people's reactions and things where, I tried this, I loved it. This worked for me. And I try to do things on request, but you know, it all comes down to it. If I'm not inspired to do it, I'm not going to do it. And even that goes for commissions. I hate commissions unless it's something that just inspires you and then you're like, yeah, I got to do that. I've got one coming up. There's, one of my passions is cactus and succulents, and I like, it's such a fragile species of plant. Cactus are only native to this continent, and even though they grow everywhere else, and being in Texas, there's actually more species of cactus in Texas than any other state. And that's really because Texas is so big and has so many different geographical areas. So you have things that are unique only to one area, but that also makes them endangered, um, and threatened because of, farming and grazing and, building and all kinds of different things. But the Cactus Society is having a big meeting down here in San Antonio, in May, and they talked to me about doing a carving, um, it's a cactus themed carving, and it's going to be a big centerpiece, and then they're going to auction it off afterwards. So I've been putting some thought into that, and I remember I went to a Christmas party at one of our clubs, functions, and I carved a big saguaro cactus with a face on it and a Santa hat, and they fought over that thing like it was, gold or something. So when this came around, it's something that I'm into. It ties two of my interests together, and so I'm carving kind of a John Wayne-ish, cactus with guns
That's
that is
cool.
going after poachers and so I'm working that up right now. I've drawn it a couple times and ran it through different AI things to kind of tweak some things, um, before I start putting it on wood. But
Oh, really
just
cool. I look forward to seeing that.
yeah, that's gonna be my fun thing. And I've got to get it done in a hurry because that it's gonna be done in May. So and between the couple and I do things to myself. I mean, I don't know why I'm teaching a completely different class in July than I am in April. I should have just taught the same class so I can, just have everything together. But no, I want to do something different. So I got to prepare two different types of classes for the next couple shows. But it's fun. I mean, because you learn along the way in preparation and it's all fun. It's all fun.
Oh, really cool. I did
And
carve
what
a
am I gonna do?
cactus once.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
and
it was a
I
little
got some.
saguaro style with the face on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's. I mean, there's a lot of different shapes and stuff and possibilities. And then I'm thinking, where I can take some like wood putty and use the wood putty to do little raised areas where the spines go, and then put the spine,
Oh, that's
so
cool.
carve ridges with like a soft V or something, and then come and put little ridges with the with with wood putty, and then I don't know if I'll end up putting a spine in there or something, but I've seen spines done with toothpicks, but to me it just looks not natural enough, um, and too solid and anyway. I don't know about spines yet, but the ridges with the wood putty were
No,
probably cool.
that's really cool. And I'm curious, what kind of tools you working with?
So, I mean, tools for me have adopted over time. I love Helvy, and I've loved Helvy for a long time. It's like anything else, as a wood carver, you develop and you do it for so long, you become a master at it, and that's where they're at. There's a lot of great knife makers right now out there that are putting some good things together. Helvy's been doing it for a long time, and they're a master. And I don't think there's anything that comes close to the flex blade for me. It
Hmm.
just does things that no other knife will do, and I always have one on my desk ready to go. And this is just flexible. I can, for me, the secret to a knife is whether it does a good swoop. I got to swoop with the blade, and it doesn't matter if it's flex, if it's anybody. If it doesn't swoop, if it chatters when I'm going through the wood, I won't touch it. Some of them I'll have
Interesting.
to take and round the. When I run it on my strop, I'll strop the back too, because I want this
Hmm.
to glide through the wood as well as the front side. But I use different blades for different things. So on my bench right now, I've got a couple different blades. I've got a Badger State, which this one I got at Lancaster from them, and it's kind of an
Oh,
in
really
between
cool.
blade where it's halfway in between a flex blade and halfway between a rigid. So if I wanted to use just one knife, this one kind of works for me. That flex blade, I can just round stuff on cheeks. I can do different things with it. You just can't do with a more firm blade. But if I'm at a willing contest or something like that where I got one blade, I'm using something like this. I've also got this knife on my desk right now. This is Chad Gaiman woodworking, and
Hmm.
He's made me a couple blades because I'm getting this issue where my hands are falling asleep and they're
Uh,
like carpal tunnel, and so I have to have a larger handle. And Helvy, and when I started Helvy, you can get on the website and order a set of 10 of whatever handle you want. Now you're
it's
limited to
impossible to
what
get them
you can
now.
get. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's not impossible. Yeah, it's impossible if you don't get out of your house. Because I can go to a show
Yeah.
where they're at and buy as many as I want right there. There's no limit. And so I mean I have drawers full of them because I go to
Oh,
where they're
cool.
at. If I stay at home and just pray to the internet gods, it's probably not going to happen. But for me,
So,
being able to work
no, go ahead.
for me
Sorry.
being able to work with guys like this that and Helby has created this niche um for everybody else, where everybody else can come in and there's a market there because they are hard to get, and so a lot of these guys are good, but it's like with everything else. I mean, if you have a knife and oh the tip broke or whatever, doesn't mean that they're not going to be a great knife maker down the road, because it's the same thing with your carving.
Of
If
course.
everybody judged you on your first carving, we'd all be like, you know, horrible. Same thing for the knife maker.
Yeah.
That's a skill. They're developing the skill. And I love supporting these guys. I've got so many different knives from different people and I'll use them all. But this knife was one of my favorites because the handle was heavy. It's not, I mean, he's maybe some longer ones, but this one is the flat grind, not the scanty grind, which he normally does. I got to have a flat grind and a heavy handle. And this one just kind of fit my hand and was there. And he's made me a couple other ones now because I've got to have more. But just awesome. Now, as far as gouges go, I primarily use a lot of Stubai. Um, Stubai, I like the steel. I'm not too happy with a lot of their grinds because, in Europe they're using different types of wood and things like that. And I think a lot of that is we expect in the United States that things are ready to go out right out of the package. Um,
Yeah.
Over there, it's not. I mean, people want to have different grinds on it based on the wood that they carve in their area and things like that. And so, I mean, those tools you do got to rework them a little bit to get them right the way you want them. But I love these tools. And the other thing, I've started using some of these, a lot of the new profiles that Badger State's got. I've got a few of these that I've been playing with. These things are great for just when I'm blocking out a figure, just removing the excess wood. These things are awesome. I can remove a lot of wood really quick. um, and hit angles that I wouldn't with a knife. So, um,
Yeah.
that's probably pretty much what I use. And, I only use 2 or 3 gouges for a project. I don't, you know, I've got 10 times more tools than I ever needed. Um, I carry some dockyards, just for different little details and stuff. But for the most part, that's about all. That's all I use. And I have flex cut. I have a lot of things, but I keep it pretty simple. You know, a lot of it is you collect tools just because you go places and they
Yeah.
have things and you just pick them up. And
Part of the
I want to
hobby.
support. Yeah, I want to support people. So I mean, I do have a bunch of other knives and stuff from people. That this one was a maker that I got out in Pennsylvania. There, he did some great stuff, and it's a little bit more simplistic. But I like the resin handles. It's pretty cool. You know, this guy on WPC, he's off of Etsy. I've
Mm.
used a couple of his on some videos, and he's out of Turkey, and he's got these awesome sheets that he's got. But I don't know. I've got so many knives. Deeper Holler. I spent some time with the Deeper Holler folks out there in Colorado last year, and they are some awesome people. I mean, if you can just, it's hard not to want to support all these people and use all their
Yeah, of
tools because they're
course.
just such great people. And that's one of the special things about our community. Um, you want these guys to succeed. You want them. So, I mean, I'll do anything I can to help them, buy tools, even if I don't really need them. Um, I'm going to buy them and support them and use them on videos and let people try them so they can experience that. When you start, it's kind of funny. Um, I had no idea what I was doing as far as tools go. I used my Swiss Army knife because that's what I had in my pocket. And
What you have. Yeah.
I get to the club meeting and says, no, no, try this. And I'm like, no, I'm good with my Swiss Army knife. But, I thought I want to do detailed stuff. So I need a detail knife. But, so I got this detail knife. And that, what to me was, it ended up being like, mopping a floor with a toothbrush. Um, yes, the detail knife was cool, but I had to get to the place to use the details before I could use the detail knife. And it's funny because now I don't use a detail knife at all. Um, because I'll do everything with a lot larger, 2-inch blade. Um, I'll swap between a blade that's thinner and a blade that's thicker, but I still use a long blade to just do everything. But it was funny because I had no idea, and so I bought a 2-inch. It was I think it was OCCT, or it was Denny Tools back then. It was just as a little detail knife, and won't touch a detail knife. I have several probably, but I mean, there's some other ones that I do like. I have almost like a lamb's paw. Um, I don't know if you can see this. This is a Helby lamb's paw. This is actually Dwayne
Yeah.
Gosnell, one of his signatures, and so it doesn't have any blade at the front, just this little type of tip there. This one is perfect for cutting out little triangles of eyes because I can cut it without damaging anything else or cutting the nose while I'm reaching over to
Yeah,
do
that's
that. So
cool.
I really like that one. Some of the Don Mertz ones that he's put together. Don Mertz has some awesome shaped knives, and I hope someday to get a couple of his. Um, just these curvy things that reach into areas and hit angles that you just can't with other tools. So just I don't know. Tools is fun. I mean, it's a whole nother thing. Sharpening is sharpening by itself is a whole nother skill. And
Yeah.
I do my best. I mean, I don't know how many different sharpening systems I have. I probably have most of them. And I spend some time trying to get my tools right and watching people and figuring it out because that is a skill. It's there's ways to do it, and I mean, it's understanding the process of what happens with sharpening is important, but there's a lot of different applications on how to do that. And that's one of those things where you ask 5 people, you get 5 different answers. That you listen to the techniques and the principles of what they're talking about, and it's all the same. They're just using different methods. So, I mean, I generally go to shows and let the professionals mess with my tools. I just try to maintain them the best that I can until I can get to those people that are the masters at what they do.
Yeah.
Sending a package to Rich and letting him do it. Let Ashton do it. Um, there's some just people that are talented at that. Um, and Alan Goodman, I've got one of his pocket knives that's awesome, and that he straightened out. It's just a beautiful knife, and I stopped carrying a pocket knife when I started wood carving because um, it didn't do the things my carving knife did. Um, so I was glad to get that from Alan because that lets me carry a pocket knife that I feel is worthy now, um, because I can carve with it if I wanted to, not just cut random packages from Amazon.
I've slowly been gaining some higher independent knife maker knives. I started about a year or so ago. I managed somehow online to get a Helvey when they did their drop. I like blocked out. I told my family, I was like, look, at 3 o'clock, whatever time it was, I was like, leave me alone. I like went somewhere quiet with my laptop open, hitting refresh. And I'll tell you, I it went so fast that
Yeah,
I was sitting there trying to like read, oh, inch and a quarter, this style, that style. And by
yeah,
the time I was like picking one, I lost it. So I went into
yeah,
panic mode because everything was sold out, and I just clicked whatever I could. And the limit was two. And I
yeah,
grabbed whatever two it allowed me to grab. I didn't even look at the sizes. And I think if I were to choose, I would pick something slightly different, that fits my own style.
yeah,
But I mean, they're great knives. I gotta admit, both of
yeah.
them. I got used to using them. They are incredible. I'm currently waiting on. I bought a Badger State blade, so I'm waiting on
Mhm.
that. And when I can recoup some funds, I'm gonna grab some of the other ones and see what I can do. But yeah, I have mainly
Yeah.
Flex Cut. I have a UK brand knife maker,
Ha- Have
Ash
you
and
have
Axe.
you
He
tried the
he makes some
Pro?
really cool stuff.
Have you tried the FlexCut
Which one?
Pro? The
I
Pro
have,
series?
yeah. They're pretty good. I do like them. For me, I don't like the handle.
Yeah. It's too
I
too big,
find
too
I
big,
find
or
it's too long for me,
okay.
and it's too slippery.
Yeah. But as a woodworker,
So
you can fix that.
I know, yeah. Well, what I ended up doing, I don't like to mess with my tools for some reason. I don't have that like in me to change things.
Yeah.
But what I ended up doing was I have that the finger tape that you wrap
Yeah.
around your
Yeah.
fingers, and I wrapped it around, and good as new. It felt more comfortable in my hand, a little heftier, a little more grip to it. But yeah,
You know
no,
what else
they.
works is
For,
tennis racket grip tape.
yeah, I heard that, and someone told me about medical tape,
Yeah.
wrapping medical tape around it. But
Yeah.
I'm using whatever I have on hand. I ordered these finger tapes, the protective tape. It came in a box of like 20 of them, different colors, and I just burned through those. So, but yeah, I don't
That's
like to
awesome.
alter my tools. I see people do it, and I'm like, it hurts me to
Well, it's
to
not
see.
it's
And
there it's some of them are collector's items and you don't want to do that, but I mean it's not like it's out of the
yeah,
package, or you know, um or you can't just get another one.
yeah, that's true. I don't know. I've never been one to modify things for some reason.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll start. I have a bunch of flex cuts that I have lying around that I can
Yeah.
play
The
around with.
Flex Cut, I do have a bunch of Flex Cuts. They've been a great company. I
Oh,
saw
very
I
great.
have student sets that they've sent me, and I'll use those at my woodcraft classes.
That's what
And
I
I
bring to when I teach as well. Yeah.
yeah, so I mean woodcraft, I used to do demos there, and I'd have a bunch of people just around me watching me carve. And if I use Flex Cut, then everybody goes to the shelf and buys Flex Cut. If I
Yeah.
use something else, then they go home and they want to buy that. So
Yeah.
I told them, I said, hey, if you want to sell tools, you should have me do the demos, and you should have me teach the classes with those tools. And that's what's happened. And they fly off the shelves there when we do carving classes. And even now, I mean, I include what's cut knife in cost of the class because I
Okay.
hate teaching people and then they go home and they don't have the ability to continue and work on them. So
Yeah.
always send them home with wood. I always send them home with projects and sending them with a knife that could do it. Um, and then they're not struggling trying to find something online that's not going to work from Amazon or something that they
Yeah.
just won't work. So Blex Cut's been great
Oh,
for that.
they're amazing company. Really good
Yeah.
company. Good tools. A good bang for your buck, for sure.
Yes. Yeah.
With
And
them,
they're available.
and then
And
and they're
as
available.
we
Yeah,
you and that's
and
part of it. And
they keep coming out with new innovative things too. They're not like stuck in a lane. They keep
yeah.
adapting and
Well,
evolving. They
so and
came out
that's
with the
why
Pro Series, and
I was so glad to see the Pro Series because that's to me is a pro level knife that's available, which you can't say that about anybody else.
I couldn't agree more. Definitely. And they also their palm gouges are really really good too.
Yeah.
I'm fortunate enough that over the years I've bought some file palm gouges.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
those have been my main go-to for those. But for years I would use the flex cut palm gouges. They
Yeah.
held up really well. Um, I think someone actually gifted it to me. An old coworker of mine. He knew I liked carving and tools, and one day he just showed up and he handed me a plastic bag, and he's like, "Here you go." And I was like, "What is this?" I look in it. There was 40 or 50 flex cut
Wow.
palm gouges in there,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Dude, you know how much these are worth?" And he was like, "Eh." He's like, "They're sitting under my bed." He's like, "You have them." So I
Yeah.
was like, "All right, great." He's like, "I know
Well,
you'll
that's
put them
awesome.
in better use than I am." So that was amazing. Very
Yeah.
fortunate for me
Yeah.
to get that.
Yeah.
Um,
But
but
no, there's been a lot of great companies out there and tools and I'm been fortunate enough to get to try new things and get knives from people that,
yeah.
have become friends and, you know,
Well, now I know.
and
Now I
going,
know I need to ask someone who's going to a trade show to buy me tools because
yeah,
I can't
yeah,
because like I said, I bought from Ashton and Badger State, but they have a long lead time unless you're at the
at
show,
the
which
show.
I can't get to.
Yeah.
And so now I got to wait
Yeah.
however long it takes,
We'll be
but it's okay.
in
It's worth the
Colorado
wait.
in July, July with them. Yeah. And I've got a list of things that I want to buy.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been hearing good things about you just showed it there, eraser
Yeah. Yeah. The racer's
tool. So
good. Y-
I want to grab. I should have when I placed my order for the knife, I should have thrown that on there because now I have to wait double as long to get them. But no, now that I'm making some good connections, I'll ask someone
Yeah.
to pick me one and mail it to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you want Helby, show up to Wisconsin.
Yeah,
That show at Stevens
all the
Point.
way across the country.
That one's gonna be awesome though.
Spa-
That's a show that it doesn't matter how far you gotta go. That's a pilgrimage
yeah,
show. That's gonna be one of
yeah,
the
I've been hearing
coolest
some
ones
good
for the
things
year.
about that one.
Yeah, I mean the level of competition is gonna be there. I mean, you talk about rock star carvers, they're all gonna be there. That's the place to be. Um, and it was fun when the CCA show was in Colorado Springs because it just became such a community show, because you go to a Wild West show, you hang out with people, but this is going to be an event and you got to tables are already sold out and we're 6 months away. Um, it's going to be a monster event. So that's worth going to and doing what you can to go hang out and just absorb it in. I mean, that's a pilgrimage show. Got to go.
Yeah, that's cool. One of these days, when I have the time and the resources to do it, I'll get out to
Yeah.
them. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, that sounds really fun. I would love to take part of that and experience it. Yeah, Jerry, it's been great talking to you. I really appreciate you coming on. Where can people find your work?
Thank you. It's been fun. You can find me on the whistlingwhittler.com. is my website, and then I am on all the social medias, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Come check out my YouTube videos, and that's at the Whistling Whittler also on YouTube. I'm on the TikTok, and you- that's a new one. We're figuring that one out, but we're on TikTok as well. So I'm all over as the Whistling Whittler.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'll definitely link all your websites and everything in the description of the show so people can find your
Awesome.
work.
Well,
And
thank you.
yeah, and Jerry, I just really appreciate you coming on and sharing your journey and everything you're doing in the wood carving community. It was a really awesome conversation, and I appreciate you taking the time to do this. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe on the YouTube channel and follow the podcast on Spotify or your favorite platform so you don't miss future episodes. And don't forget to check out Jerry's work, The Whistling Whittler, and show him some support. He has a great YouTube channel and his carvings are really fantastic. I think you'll really appreciate it. As always, thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode of the Modern Woodcarver Podcast.